Hello, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs. Sometimes it feels like less and less each day, but I still love them. My name is Adam Mamawala. I'm one of those people. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey, but you already knew that, didn't you? Kevin, how you doing?
You did know. I do. I love the idea of the Cubs. I love the possibility of the Cubs, and I love several actual Cubs right now. So I think that all holds up. Yeah, I'm doing all right. This is about in recent times about the most coming off of a high as we could possibly do. There was almost a no-hitter for the Cubs yesterday, as the Cardinals had a no-hitter going against them going into the eighth. It was almost the perfect combination of a day. But yeah, Cubs won with a banging 1-0 Marcus Stroman complete game shutout yesterday.
Yeah, you know, the Cubs shut out the Rays 1-0 because, of course, you get swept by the Reds at home and then you beat the best team in baseball. That's how baseball works. But weirdly, you know, Marcus Stroman shut out the Rays, but Mets fans were still offended by it. It's very confusing.
Yeah, they thought he didn't even let a reliever in the game, Adam, so he made it all about him. And that's such a Stroman thing. That was very funny to see. There was a lot of Mets hubbub online about I'm sure you saw there was like anonymous Mets speaking to the New York Post, which is just like garbage speaking to garbage, basically. And there was just anonymous Mets who wouldn't put their name behind it, being like, that's not how the game is played, and he's making it all about himself. I don't know why I slipped into a Cosby impression for a second there, but that's is what
not how the game
you don't
is
do
played.
the baseball about yourself. And it was so fucking cowardly and stupid and dumb, but also funny. So yeah,
It was. Yeah, so it's been kind of a strange week. I'm trying to think of when we would have recorded last week in terms of like what had and hadn't happened yet. But basically, long homestand, Cubs won the first two against the Mets, which was great, and that included another really nice Stroman start. They won the Drew Smiley start against the Mets, and then Kyle Hendricks made his return, which you love to see, and he kind of ran into some bad luck, I feel like is the best way to describe it, right?
Yeah, so if you didn't see the game, the box score doesn't look good. He went, I think, 4 1/3, gave up four earned runs, I want to say, or maybe it was 5 runs and 3 earned, something like that. I should know exactly, but
Yeah.
basically there was a 4-run. There was a big second inning where everything was with 2 strikes and 2 outs. And mostly soft contact, just finding a hole. And we heard about Hendricks building up his arm strength over the past year. I mean, he hadn't pitched in a major league game since last July. We heard about the velocity being higher. It seems like that checked out. He was sitting, around 87 to 89, it seemed like.
Gas.
Gas, absolutely straight heaters. And the stuff like looked good. The changeup was cutting and fading. The ball was, it was moving in ways that was good. There was location-wise, command-wise, he wasn't quite sharp, which is to be expected. He hasn't pitched in a major league game since last July. And I think even though the box score wasn't good, overall the stuff looked promising.
Yeah, and our buddy Ken Schultz was at the game. Also, my friend Adam, the Mets fan, was at that game. But it seemed like the reception that Kyle got was appropriately awesome, and just that, especially how everything's played out with the other folks who have left in recent years. It was nice to have like a pure, classy Wrigley moment.
100%. With the last champion standing from that time, David Ross is here too, but in a different capacity now. But Hendricks being the last player still playing from the championship years. The mostly nice thing, so I don't want to make this a Marquee bitch sesh. But a day after Marquee was having some studio segment playing over when Marcus Stroman gave up the no-hitter in the 7th, like just avoiding covering the game on the field, all I wanted to see when Hendricks came back, I wanted to see how the crowd reacted when his song, Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith, hit and he walked out to the mound. And I knew Marquee was going to blow it. I knew they weren't just going to show you that and get out of the way, and they didn't. But thanks to the Cubs fans that were there and caught it on their cameras and did Marquee's job for them. Kara Fagan, I believe, was the one we retweeted over at Away Games Pod that caught that moment, because that was exactly what I wanted to see, the man coming out to his music again.
Yeah, Marquis is doing too much. They done been doing too much,
Yes,
and
say less, Marquis.
say less. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
so funny that the attitude for Marquis is like people just want visual noise all the time and 100 people in the booth, and then you listen to a radio broadcast and it's so clear who they think is listening to baseball on the radio because it's like the seventh inning brought to you by North Shore Adult Diapers.
It is literally one of the most significant sponsors of this year, which is incredible. It reminds me of when I watch I put on Law and Order, the
Yeah,
original, in the
yeah.
background when I'm like working on side jobs and
Mhm.
stuff, just sort of background noise. But it is funny. Daytime Law and Order reruns, same thing, just
Yes.
showing you it shows you what they think of you because all the commercials are like, are you on drugs?
Life
Do you need to go to
alerts.
rehab?
Yeah.
Do you have a
Yeah,
gambling
yeah, yeah.
problem? What's happening? Like, basically. And that
North
is
Shore Adult Diapers. Did you shit your pants when you saw Mastrobuoni in the two-hole?
we've got Davis's gravesite industry for the Cubs 2023 season or your father. It is just, yeah, it is a funny two different vibes when Marquis also trying to be like MTV from 1998. It's not even like modern short attention span
Mhm.
theater. It feels like a throwback. They have an amazing ability to make a live game feel like a replay of a game from 7 years ago. I don't know how they do it, but it's incredible.
Yeah, but they have so many cool VJs.
Dude, oh man, did you see what fucking Kennedy was dropping the other day? Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, she's actually
Yeah.
still going on Fox. She's a pretty bad person. But yeah, the Kyle Hendricks comeback was nice to see, and I'm glad he's just it's just nice. I don't know how you felt, but for me in this year, even coming into this year and last year, I felt myself emotionally more distant from the Cubs than I've been in my whole life. I think
Mhm.
literally. So for me, it was a real cool, joyful thing to have Kyle Hendricks back and like to get to really emotionally be invested in a game. It's cool.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't like feeling that way because I do love the Cubs and I'll always love the Cubs, but like even thinking about things that I wanted to do, right? Like you and I were planning to go to London in 2020.
Yeah.
And who knows what that experience would have been like, but like, the Cubs are there playing the Cardinals at the end of June. And like sure, I wish I were going, but there's also this part of me that's like if the Cubs lost 12-1 to the Cardinals and I had spent thousands of dollars to go see it, like
Mhm.
how would that experience be?
Pretty bad. I've only spent thousands of dollars to see the Cubs lose once, and at least it was a World Series game. So,
Right.
it is, and I got to stay local at least.
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of like yesterday, it was a 1-0 game.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was a real tight one. Yeah, it's weird, man. This past week overall, you look at it and you look at it's been a real shit sandwich with shit as the meat. Where beating the best team in baseball, great. 2 out of 3 of the Mets, great, and then a sweep from the Reds at home in the middle there. Did you watch any of those games?
I watched, yes, I watched. So I listened to the game Friday and then watched the end of it. And that one was just like we've talked so much about the fact that when we look at what's been good so far, you just cannot expect it to be as good. And that's a perfect example of like Justin Steele was on like an Arietta like streak of games at home at least. Like he
Yeah.
quite literally had not had a bad start at Wrigley in a year.
Hmm.
And it's gonna happen sometimes. And that doesn't mean that he's not still a great pitcher, that he's not still like an ace caliber dude. But like if you're expecting Steele and Stroman to go out there every single 5 days and give up one or no runs, you're not being realistic. And
No,
that's not a knock on either of them, but like you just can't expect that.
No, they have to be. You have to account for three. You have to account for your rotation to not be completely perfect every time through. And even yesterday, Stroman had to be almost literally perfect to win that
Yeah.
game against the Rays, running out another weird lineup. And I know David Ross only has the roster he has, but man, he's really putting together some lineups that are making me be like, I'm trying to say more can't be expected of you, but I think in a literal sense, more could be expected. I don't think David Ross is the main problem, but the manager is only in charge of so many things, but lineup is one of them, and they've been bizarre lately.
Yeah, I mean and I mentioned it before when I was riffing about adult diapers, but like having Miles Mastrobuoni in the two hole as a dude who's hitting what 140. Like I don't understand how you can justify that.
And then was leading off yesterday. Yeah,
Yeah.
was leading off. He's OPS and under 600. I mean, it's just and I understand he's had some small sample size, loud outs, whatever. Small sample size, yes. And I'm fine with Mastrobuoni up on the roster right now. I think you can find more
Mhm.
use for him on a regular basis than Nick Madrigal. So that optioning Madrigal to AAA and keeping Mastrobuoni, I'm cool with all that. But also, when people are like, "Oh, small sample size," that doesn't mean that hitting him leadoff is bad. The guy got released. That's how he came over here. It's not like there's some massive success in the past for him. He's very good at AAA, but we have several guys who've been very good at AAA, right? Like Velasquez is another guy who's still down there. So
Or Mervis, who obviously is like not blowing the world away after coming up, and he was amazing in AAA.
yeah, he's adjusting. So but at least I think as long as he's getting consistent at bats, let's ride this for a bit.
Every time I see Mastrobuoni in the like one or two hole, there's a part of me that's like, did he witness David Ross kill a man? And like, does he have something over him,
It is
like a
weird,
blackmail situation?
right? Because it's also like if he's in the 9 spot, who gives a shit? And he takes walks, which is nice.
Mhm.
That's a good sort of 9 spot guy. It's just it's a strange. It's very reminiscent of Tony La Russa hitting Lurie Garcia in the 3 hole. I know was sort of a lightning rod for White Sox fans last year, just being like, "Are you fucking with us? What are you like? Are you trolling?" There is,
Right.
and I know we've been told so many times by by the Hoyers of the world and the Cubs front office about like our projection systems have. I know we're predicted to not be so good, but our projection systems are different. So they have these secret stats somewhere that must mean something that makes all of this make sense. Meanwhile, I saw a stat recently that the Cubs have underperformed their projections over the last 3 years at a rate that almost no team has, like in the bottom 10% or something versus projections, which maybe tells me, Adam, that your secret stats are worse than the normal ones. Like you found a way to make your stats work less. And I feel like that shouldn't be an edge we're looking for here.
No, no, it should not. But the thing about every week, it's the same conversation where it's like, after all of this, the Cubs are still within 5 games of the division lead. Like,
This division sucks so much.
so
It
bad.
sucks so much shit. It's a terrible division. They can still get back in it. As we're speaking now, the Cubs are what, 7 games under 500, I think?
Mhm.
You can win 7 games in a row. This team could absolutely win 7 games in a row because it has starting pitching that could just string together that where the offense could score three or four runs a game for a week and you could win all of them. That's possible. That can happen. So the season's not over, and it is funny watching the meltdown on Twitter and people being like, "Dear God, I can't believe how bad this is," and fire everyone into the sun. Meanwhile, I think we've been sort of predicting this for a long time as people who haven't bought into some sort of bizarre Jed magic that many other people have. And I'm like, I don't. They're actually not quite this bad. I think they will be a little better, but I feel weird in a position where I'm like, they're actually better than you guys are saying now.
Right.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I think they've lost so many close games. It seems like every one-run game they lose, they have had games that the bullpen just can't hang on to. And I mean, all of that is real. That's not.
Yeah.
It's not an indication that like they should have won all of those games, because I'm sure they've also won a handful that they shouldn't have. Like, I mean, there
Right.
was a game against the Mariners where they're down 7-0 and came storming back. Like, you can't forget about those situations. But I do think that ultimately the team as it's currently constituted is like basically a 500 team, which means that they should be a bit better than they are right now. And that if they chose to add at the deadline, I can't even say that with any like sincerity, because I just don't think they'll do it.
No, it's hard to say they should, unless yeah. And I can't even muster the internal energy to be like, unless they trade a bunch of stuff for Ohtani and give him the world. Like, why would he want to come here at this point? I can't even do that. So, yeah, it's but but it's been a particularly rough stretch for the Cubs. But we're coming off coming off a solid game, I guess,
Yeah.
and a win, and the series win. I mean, it'd been a while since we'd won a series,
Mm-hmm.
and then took the Mets one, so that's good. Adam, before we get to our guest,
Yeah.
any other stuff to mention from the week before we go to our our author guest? That's right, there's an author on the show.
Yes, we're recording this kind of after the interview, but you'll hear it after this, and it was a ton of fun. I think you'll get a kick out of it. The only thing I would say is like I talked last week about the fact that the Cubs have not won more than two games in a row since they swept Oakland in mid-April, and that is still the case. They won the first two against New York and then lost four in a row until they won yesterday. I would really like for them to prove to us that they can win more than two games in a row. Like one of the reasons that when the Cubs were down 3-1 in 2016, all of us felt like it was possible for them to come back was that they had won three consecutive games a ton of times that season, right? And
Yeah,
this is like obviously it goes without saying that this team is not that team, but I do think that they're a team that can win more than two games in a row. And to just have any sort of continuity or consistency in being able to do that, I feel like would go a long way in making us all believe a little bit more. I guess the only other thing that I have for you, Kevin, is heat or nug. So you got
Heater Nugs. I got my brain says Nugs. You
Mhm.
know, my brain, the Nuggets, but it's always a thing where one team's rested for a long time. Is that better, or are they out of rhythm a little bit? While Miami, like it takes a lot for me to root for anything from Florida in any way, but
Mhm.
I really like Jimmy Butler, and
Of course.
he's so weird, and he's just such a fuck you guy. It's they did the funniest thing that they almost blew a 3-0 series lead to the one seed, right? The
Mhm.
Celtics are the one seed, I thought.
Two seed
Two
Bucks
seed.
were
Okay.
one.
Yeah, they already beat the one seed. They beat the Bucks.
Yeah.
That's right. So they almost blew a 3-0 lead and then went to Boston to fuck them and just be like, we just go into Boston to make everyone as sad as they can after giving them hope. It was so funny.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like, I don't know, I'd love to see Jimmy Butler finish it off, kind of.
Yeah. It is funny that they were like, "Hey, remember how much it sucked to watch the Bruins lose a game 7?
Oh,
How about
God.
that again? Would you like that, TD
And
Bank
And it was to the
fans?"
Panthers. It was to the Miami hockey team too.
Oh
Just
shit. Yeah.
Miami versus Boston. Tough break. So yeah, who do you got as NBA guy? Listen to Adam's basketball podcast, Horse.
Yeah, please do. I mean, I kind of feel like it's the Heat. I think that they're like team of destiny level at this point, and I've only made one sports bet this year, and it was yesterday. I didn't win the bet because it was a parlay, but I took Heat money line and Butler to score 35, which he didn't do. But like I had a very strong feeling that the Heat would win that game.
Yeah.
So not that that necessarily means anything with them going to Denver, but I want the Heat to win. I would be fine with either team winning. I'm thrilled that it's not Lakers Celtics and that we get Nuggets Heat.
Me
I'm all
too.
about it.
Me too. I feel like you see a lot of people complaining online about like, oh, who cares? It's like, well, if you watch the sport, I always think it's fun when a new team wins. And Jokic is an obviously insane generational talent.
Yeah.
Denver, that franchise has never won, so that would be really fun for them to win.
Neither
And
franchise has won, have they?
well, the Heat have won a bunch with
Oh, of course. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the yeah.
but it feels like they haven't won since LeBron days, you know. So like
It is so funny. Like I know that the Heat won several times with LeBron, but I almost like think of them in a different category because I was like, no, that was LeBron. That was like a different thing.
it kind of is because it was totally different, you know. And then Dwayne Wade and Shaq won together before that, but it feels like
Sure.
feels like a different franchise back then
Yeah.
because Jimmy Butler goes there and it's like, oh, the Heat are underdog team, which wasn't that was not the identity of that team last time they were winning. So yeah, I feel like game one will tell us a lot because I feel like watching Denver play in the Western Conference Finals, just watching them work against the Lakers, I was like, I don't know, they seem unbeatable right now, you know. But if Miami can hang with them game one, I feel like they're just tough enough that, yeah, I wouldn't be
Yeah,
shocked
we'll
to see
see.
that.
But I got nothing else, and let's go ahead and throw it over to that interview.
We have a fun thing. We have a guest here today. She is the author of Aisle 228. It's a book about poems about the Chicago Cubs and listening to baseball on the radio. Covers highlights of the past 50 years of baseball, culminating in the 2016 Cubs World Series win. As we all know, thankfully, after that, baseball ceased to exist worldwide. And this book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Texas A&M University Press. She's written for FanGraphs, Baseball Prospectus, a bunch of other places. Sandra Marchetti, thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. This is lovely. I'm a big fan of away games.
Oh, thank you.
I should say the podcast, not necessarily road trips. You know? Especially with the way things have been going.
Yes. It would be, yeah. It would, yeah.
In fairness, we were also losing a lot at Wrigley, so, you know.
Yeah, it's true, too. It's true, too. This homestand has been horrible. I on Marquee last night, I think they actually said, like, if we sweep the Rays, we can salvage this homestand. And I'm like, are you listening to the words coming out of your mouth?
Yeah, sure. And you know, if we have a time machine, a lot of other good things could happen. You know, if there's a lot of ifs there. 1-0 though. It was. I mean, game one win.
Yes.
We're recording this after the Marcus Stroman complete game shutout.
Yes, extremely impressive. The sinker was doing its thing. You know, even the Kevin Cash. I listened to a post game interview with him and. Even he was impressed, and we know he's seen a lot of great pitching. So, yeah, it was a fantastic game. I only wish I had attended that game and not a game in the Red Series. I went to Saturday's game. But, yeah, no, absolutely wonderful, except, and there's always something to pick at as a Cubs fan, got to get that offense going, right?
It was a weird thing where it was one of the, I mean, certainly on the Mount Rushmore of what the fuck is this lineup up to in terms of what they were posting this when they posted the lineup. But it is weird when you win 1-0. It's like, well, it worked. I mean, the lineup didn't work.
Right.
Like,
it was timely hitting to get that one run.
Sure. Yes. Did it take an error and 2 sac flies? It absolutely did. But did we get it? We did.
Yeah, I think like the whole Miles Mastrobuoni, actually Zach McKinstry is playing fairly well in Detroit. So I was even having a thought the other day about like, did we make the wrong move releasing, or did we get rid of the wrong, you know, little middle infield replacement guy? Like, that's a bad thing.
I tell you what, that's indicative of what the current Cubs fan experience is, that we're sitting here dreaming on Zach McKinstry, wishing he were still on the Cubs.
Really messed up.
And I like little middle infield replacement guy. The LMIRG position on the team has we have the quota of 1, and it's I mean, you know, it's I think I tweeted this from the At Away Games pod thing, but I'm like, I don't have emotional room in my life to be upset about Zach McKinstry. It's so far down the list of things for me. It was like last year, I guess we kept Ortega and a bevy, Hermosillo too, who I was into at the time, so I can't retcon that.
Sure.
But like, and then Harold Ramirez was released to the to these Rays, who then did very well. So, yeah, it's been a lot of. It's been
That's so healthy.
Don't forget about Zach Shore. They got 2 Zachs over.
That's
on the
right,
Tigers.
ZS9. Yeah, and we're all rooting for him, fellow podcaster. So.
He's got 8 bombs. He's got 8 homers, as he's usually
amazing.
a defensive replacement. Yeah, he's been great over there. Sandra, the book is called Aisle 228. My first question: why Aisle 228? Did you have a season ticket situation? Was that a particularly important seating spot for you?
Yes, and actually went over there the other day, back over to where Aisle 228 is. Or what was, and they've renumbered all the sections, I think, as we know, and they're calling them sections now rather than aisles, and that's emotionally difficult on me. But yeah, I would say from sometime in the 90s for sure to 2014, those were the tickets that we bought from a season ticket holder. Aisle 228, row 7. And we watched 10 games a year from those seats. And the first half of the book is called Losers. It's a section called Losers. And pretty much all the poems in Wrigley in that section take place from the perspective of those seats. And what you can kind of, it's behind first base, down the right field line, and really, really beautiful perspective there. The only thing you kind of can't see is the right field corner. And you can see all the sun setting through the grandstand, and so it is significant for me. The book is takes place, at a lot of games at Wrigley with my dad, and he was the one that I sat with in that section. So actually, the season ticket holder, funny story, he got rid of his season tickets end of 2014 because he was just like, the team is terrible and I don't want to watch this.
Oh God.
And, we were telling him, I mean, more so my father than me, but, this is not the time. Like, don't sell now. And he did not listen.
Oh, that's as long as he didn't sell him to Marlins man himself, I think
God.
at least we're karmically okay. Also, that is karmically extremely Cubs fan, I think, and especially of that era and up into that era, to give it away at exactly that time. I was
so true.
I read some of the poems in the book, and there was one line from I think it was called First Poem, where not to spoiler alert on this poem, but towards the end, there's a line that says, "When it was over, I knew I was to blame." And I was like, I feel like that in every moment of my life in general, but certainly as a Cubs fan, I think like easy to be like, is it my fault? It's just like a consistently childhood divorced parents scenario. Like, did I do it? Is that why everybody's sad?
Yeah, 100%. And I would say, like, there are a lot of moments in this book where, as you mentioned before, the self-care of not trying not to care about Zach McKinstry and Zach Short. I think there's a lot of poems in this book where the speaker, or which is really very blurred lines with myself, is just empathically feeling the team. There's this real it's not shying away from fandom or the emotion of fandom, where we at some point just feel like, okay, I must have been sitting in the right spot or wearing the right thing, or I'm not leaving even though things are going badly, or this is going badly and I have to switch it up, or whatever. So
Sandra,
I'm not going to root for the villain.
I'm so superstitious even now, so irrationally so, that as a comedian, obviously, like, anytime the Cubs play at night, I will try to not find out the score. I'll come back home and I'll try to watch the game after the fact. And even when I'm watching the game and I know it's happened 3 hours prior, if Boog or somebody says something that's like a jinxie, like, well, the Cubs haven't given up runs in the 7th inning in this long, I still find wood to knock on, even though I know intellectually that the game has already happened. So,
man, what a time is a flat circle jinx. Like, that is, I mean, that is sci-fi too, I feel like.
It's true. If I don't knock on wood in the future, the past will not remain the past. But
you will remain unknocked.
Sandra, give us some context in terms of like your history as a Cubs fan, your history writing poetry, and kind of how and when those things intersected.
Yeah, so I've been a Cubs fan probably since birth. I remember being very, very young, maybe 3 years old, and going to Cubs games, and sitting way, way in the back, in the upper deck, and worrying that I was going to fall out of the back of the stadium. Very little kid fear. At that time, I hadn't been to guaranteed rate, where that really could happen.
I was going to say that is, you can go 8 miles south and get really in danger vertically and gravity-wise.
Yeah, exactly. So, but as a kid, I remember being fearful, but also awestruck, of course. And then, I have poems in the book about being like 9 years old and watching the 1993 World Series with Joe Carter, and Mitch Wild Thing Williams. That's definitely a memory. And so I've been a baseball fan all my life, Cubs fan all my life. My father is a huge Cubs fan. He's the star of the book, really.
I saw the dedication was for him, which is very nice.
Yes, and he taught me everything he knows. I think we still go to games and people turn around and say, wow, you guys really know your stuff, and they're always surprised to see that it's not two men, so, but anyway, so I've been a Cubs fan forever, and I've also been writing poetry for a very long time. I was always an artistic kid. I still have drawings I made of like my favorite baseball players as a kid. I have like a drawing where it's like Barry Bonds and a bunch of other players, and they're, you can distinctly tell what team they're on. And but then when I was in high school, I started writing poetry. I think a lot of people write poetry in high school. But I latched on to some contemporary poets I really liked in college. And I was like, wow, there's more to this than Rudyard Kipling and, Shakespeare. So
Yeah, they didn't write a lot of good baseball poems, those two.
no.
I feel like they didn't come up a lot.
They missed the boat on that, yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. And so as I was going along writing poetry, I was always watching the Cubs, of course. I lived in Virginia for a long time, doing my master's degree, and I watched the Orioles and the Nationals on Masson, and I had the Cubs on the radio and all this stuff. And I knew that once I finished my first book, which was like my master's thesis, like I was going to write a book about the Cubs because I knew it was inside of me, And so once I finished that first book and finally found a publisher for it, which was a big like weight off my shoulders, I was like, okay, and I just started writing, and I probably had 20 poems right away because they were all those memories that I had wanted to write about forever. The 1998 playoffs, Kerry Wood versus the Braves, 2003, 2007, 2008, like at this point it was about 2014. So I had a lot of things. Like I had stories about my
You
father.
You started writing the book in 2014.
Yes,
You're saying start putting it together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I started putting it together, writing it in 2014. And, I had all these yarns and stories and all these things. And so I probably had about 20 poems really quickly. And then the Cubs, as we know, got good. And so I had a lot to write about, and there were some publishers that around 2017 were saying to me, let's get this book published. Let's get it out there. Like, the team is great. And I said, it's not done. So I worked on it a couple more years, and then then after that I paid the price a little bit because it took me like 3-4 years to find a publisher after that. But,
would have been nice if you could have just emailed the Ricketts and be like, "Is it done?" And they could have told you, "Yeah, it's done. It's gonna be done." So print it.
Yeah, I like the idea that you're like, no, I'm a real Cubs fan. I'm gonna wait till they're bad again to get this thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just like, and like capitalizing on my success, I would never do that. Just like the team, keep it going. No, but that's okay.
Sure.
I think it's definitely a better book now than it would have been if I had just rushed it out there.
And so when did it officially release? This was.
Yeah, it was just this past month.
Okay, cool. So it's fresh.
Yeah, so
fresh
it's
out.
really fresh. It's brand new. And I'm off on a book tour right now. I'm a 9-to-5er, so every weekend I'm going someplace. I'm going to some really exotic locations like Toledo, Indianapolis,
Go Mud
Des
Hens.
Moines.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Those are all minor league, solid minor league towns you're naming. Those the three off the top.
Absolutely.
It's
true.
The S is silent, but the city is buzzing in that last one.
That's
for sure.
That's it. I'm gonna go steak to Burgo.
Yeah.
So no, actually, Alex Cohen, I'm gonna be next week. I'm gonna be on Alex Cohen's broadcast for the 6-3 game.
Oh, that's great. And he's the broadcaster for the Iowa Cubs, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So because I have a reading in Des Moines at Beaverdale Books this Saturday. So
lovely. And how are those? Cool. How are the live readings? How is that process?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit like, Adam, I'm so like impressed with you. I really, at some point, I think my husband and I both would probably love to try a 5-minute stand-up comedy set. I think that's about all that I could handle. But they're a little bit like, I think, stand-up comedy because you read and you have to make little jokes. You have to keep people interested. But it's really interesting because I've been reading some poems and people will cry. People will literally cry. And then there are people at the readings who are like, I don't like poetry, but this is like really connecting to me. And that's probably one of my most cherished parts of this whole process is that, there are people who haven't picked up books in a while. There are people who haven't read poetry since high school who are like buying this book and really enjoying it. And that just means so much to me because, I feel like I'm connecting with an audience that I never had a chance to in the rest of my poetry life, which is really has not been connected to baseball.
No, it's
So.
it's a great thing. Adam, isn't it so great when the audience cries? Don't you, isn't it a fun surprise?
It's always my favorite. No, but I mean, Sandra, along those lines, I mean, Kevin and I are both stand-up comics. We've both been doing it for a while, and there are these times where after a show, people will come up to you and say some version of like, "Oh, you were actually pretty funny," and it's always like, why were you coming into this expecting that I wouldn't be? Like, I guess I'll take the compliment, but there are those
Yeah.
people that are like, I don't. It's not like they're rooting against you, but it's like, oh, I didn't know what to expect when I came here, and I had a good time.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't usually like poetry. That's cool. You don't have to say that part. If you don't want to, you can like,
It's
yeah.
honestly okay because so many people don't like poetry that it doesn't really faze me. But I will say the thing that I don't like is when people are like, "Oh, so you're actually selling these?" Like my parents and my in-laws are very much like, "So have you sold some books?" And I'm like, "Don't please don't say that." Like I understand like it's a small book and it's a university press, but yes, we're selling books. People are actually buying.
It's a job. Yeah, it's a job. It is. I mean, that is certainly something comedians run into too. It's like I think Adam and I both had people like I've had people walk away from the table just like with an album of mine and been like, "Thanks," and I'm like, That's not. These aren't business cards. These are, it's like, come back, pal."
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real. For real. Well, I'm sorry to discount your comedic background, Kevin. I didn't know, but
Oh, Adam's way
now I'm
bigger.
gonna
Don't
have
worry
to
about it.
now I'm gonna have to find some of your work.
No, good luck. Yeah, pay up. So we do you have a poem you would like to speaking of
Sure.
poetry readings, would you like to hit us with one?
Sure. I will read you a comedic poem because I am here with you guys, and I think that this one is maybe the only poem in here that well, I don't know. The only thing about it is it's not really a Cubs poem because there are some poems in here that aren't necessarily about the Cubs.
You can, I mean, if you want to do like one kind of baseball in general poem, one Cubs poem, that
Okay.
that works for us.
Okay, that sounds good. You might have to cut this because I'm looking at the table and
Oh,
trying
we
to
don't
find this.
edit. This is consider this live.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, editing is really, really tough, I
Yeah,
know. So
people pay for the comedy. The podcast, you get
yeah,
what you get, folks.
yeah, yeah,
You
right.
get what you
Okay.
get and you don't get upset. That's how it goes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so we'll start with the Cub centric and then we'll go to the funny.
Sure.
We'll end on the symbol clash. Um this one is called Frame. It's the first poem in the book. It's a sonnet for people who care.
Please tell me it's about
Um
Wilson Contreras being a better framer than people give him credit for.
oh my God, that's a great idea for a poem.
Write it.
It could actually be a found poem just from all quotes from the media saying things like that.
Oh God.
Yeah, like where it's not really me talking. I like that idea. Next project. This one's a little serious than that. Frame. Tucked in the western grandstand, imagine Wrigley, a sliver of light, orange green beams gone between golden arches as scoreboard plates clink in place. The fourth inning haze filters the sun, a yoke yawning itself undone in the upper deck air to curve against each pillar, straining my gaze in aisle 228. My father gripes and wipes his nose through the April game, the team terrible again. Yet players lope over this green hill, and our minds agree to rise and clap for them. What are we doing? What are we
Thank
doing?
I was like, I don't have a snap sound effect. I do. Do
Oh,
people snap
snap.
IRL, or do they, or is it, or do they
Sometimes
just
they
applaud?
do, and you know what? I find it unnerving.
I do
Like
too.
I grew up in a poetry community where we clapped at the end of a reading. Like I'd read for 15 or 20 minutes and then people would clap. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm used to. So when people snap after a poem, I'm like, what's going on? Like, are you trying to catch a bug? You know?
Yeah.
Kevin, I've had people snap like during a setup for a joke, and I stop and I'm like, whatever you think this is, it's not that.
Yes,
It is
please
so
do
not
not do
that.
that. It is weird. I feel like with younger audiences now, it's
Yeah.
like if you get on a run they're
Yes,
agreeing with,
yes.
it's a lot of that.
A lot of
Uh,
yassing, a lot of snapping.
Yes, no.
yes.
I met a graduate student in poetry at like a very prestigious university, and she was like, I welcome the snaps. And I'm like, things have changed. You know?
Yes.
It's got to be Instagram or TikTok or something. Okay.
That was great though. I also have to say I'm sure it wasn't, but the Golden Arches reference, I want to believe that's a reference to the old famed McDonald's outside.
Yes, it is.
That's what I
It
thought.
is.
Yeah,
I
it
thought
had the
Yeah.
which RIP, right? It's
RIP.
gone. Yes.
RIP. It is gone.
Oh man, I had
Yeah.
in 2003. I was at a doubleheader between the Cubs and Cardinals that Sosa walked it off the day game. It was in a 5-game set, and it was very important to how things were going. And I was in the bleachers with my friend Dusty Shekels, who imagine what you think when you hear the name Dusty Shekels. That's exactly what he looks like. And we had the worst sunburns of our lives after game 1, and I went to that McDonald's and got like handfuls of ice to just hold on our faces, like like people who were invented before sunscreen was invented, but we did that before going back to game 2. So that McDonald's will always, those Golden Arches will always hold a special place in my heart. Yeah.
It sounds perfect. Yeah, no, there's something about that McDonald's and the sun setting over the McDonald's that for Cubs fans is very idyllic, so
Yeah.
I thought it belonged in there for
Yeah,
sure.
leaving the day game, really
Yeah.
like at the end of a day game, watching the sunset that way is
Yeah.
is a lovely
Oh my
thing.
God.
Sandra,
oh my God. So
before you
poetic.
read your final poem, I want to see if you'll indulge me.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a Cubs poem myself. And
Yes.
do you remember this, Kevin?
In my head somewhere I was like, I swear to God, Adam's written a poem. Yes.
So my senior year of high school, we were assigned in my English class to write a poem about love, to write a love poem. And naturally, me being the person that I am, I went home and wrote a poem about the Cubs. So this is 2005 that I'm writing this.
Oh man.
Sandra, will you indulge me?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. I come from the school of Shel Silverstein, so everything in my life is rhyming.
I can't wait.
All right, here we go. I believe it was called My One True Love, and it went like so. Is there anything more brilliant than a Sunday in the park, or the long majestic journey of the home run soaring arc? Whether April or October, whether blinding sun or clouds, there's an overpowering sense of being one among the crowds, of fans who wait for decades, hoping one day they'll be blessed with a team that hoists that trophy, signifying they're the best. When I started watching baseball, 98 if I recall, I soon realized that the game was more than just a bat and ball, that it overtook the senses with a power to excite, watching Woody strike out 20, Sammy sprinting out to right. The home run chase, the playoff race, the faith that never ceases, that this year could finally be the year futility decreases. It's been 97 years now since the Cubs have won it all, 97 years of curses, chokes, and most of all, a ball. A little ball of twine and seams that has amazing powers to captivate and devastate a person in 3 hours. Cubs fans are famous for their faith. There's never a reprieve, for we know there's always next year, so we might as well believe.
Wow.
You're so money and you don't even know it. That's what I did for my phone.
I was looking for sound
You
effects
were
that work after poems here.
You were a special child, huh?
Adam
No,
feels
I
things.
just
He
love the
feels.
Cubs.
He
I
expresses.
love the Cubs.
Yes.
How old were you when you wrote that?
17?
Okay, wow. Very good. I actually really enjoyed it. It's
Thank
crazy. People, when I tell them I'm working on this or I worked on this, they come out of the woodwork with their Cubs poems. Like, this is not the first time somebody said, like, I have one.
Yeah.
And that's so amazing because it is something that it makes me feel like I'm not alone. Like, I'm not the only person who thought this whole thing that we're wrapped up in is worthy of poetry.
No, of course. And look, who amongst us has not written some angsty high school poetry? In my case,
Yes.
my angst was just derived from the Cubs.
100%.
05, pretty angsty. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what's amazing is that, that angst has lasted through the years, which means
Sure
it's really a true love.
Yeah.
It
It's
has.
gone through seasons for sure.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you for
Oh.
indulging me.
Yes.
I appreciate
Oh
it.
my God.
And
So good.
You want to hit
Really
us
one
with
of the
the?
better ones I've heard.
You want to hit us with the closer, Sandra?
Yes, I will.
Cool.
So what I will say about this poem is that Bob Uecker is appearing a few times in this book, along with other, I've got other broadcasting legends in here. I've got players who are not necessarily Cubs, but were maybe some of our nemesis. And I think everybody loves a Bob Uecker reference. So
Sure.
I thought, why not a poem? So this one's called Distortion. I won't forget listening to a Brewers game as the sun sunk over the jack pine ridges of the Upper Peninsula. The signal glowed fainter with each ray disappearing. I was northing with Bob Uecker, and when the light dimmed, well past 9, Milwaukee was losing, and so was I, winking slow across the shoreline, my ears wrecked in the static of a bobblehead giveaway.
That's way better than a snap.
Yeah, 100%. Get the DJ horn on it. Lovely.
That's
is
my
very
funny
nice.
ending. Yes.
That is great.
So
Well,
romantic, those bobblehead giveaways.
Oh, extremely. And I mean, I wonder if they got the number right on that one.
I think it was a Jonathan Lucroy. Yeah.
Oh, what a bobblehead indeed. The Lucroy Cubs hero, former Cubs legend, briefly, Jonathan Lucroy. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Sandra, where can people find you online if they would like to follow you, your Cubs poetry, your fandom? I know we follow you on Twitter. Tell us where people can find you.
Yeah. So I'm at Sandra, Sandra Poetry on Twitter and on Facebook. And then on Instagram, I'm Sandra M, as in Marchetti Poetry, Sandra M Poetry. And then, if you want a taste of the book, you can just Google my name, and there's tons of poems available free online at all the places you mentioned earlier. And the book's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, TAMU Press, Texas A&M Press, I should say, and just about anywhere you go to find a book. So
perfect. If you want to be cool,
awesome,
go buy the book.
And Sandra, I have to say, I don't know if you've done this already, and apologies if you have, but I felt like you read those really beautifully. Like you should do, if there's like a way to get it on Audible, I think that would be really cool too.
I would love to do an audiobook. Any audiobook. Like I would do an audiobook of someone else's really boring memoir because that's how much I enjoy the idea of audiobooks. But yes, that's a dream for sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And go Cubbies, better times ahead, and everybody go buy the book.
Here's to getting out of the basement, guys.
Exactly.